Good evening. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're doing a new installment in our Intro to Fellowships and Grant Writing series, where we're talking about how to solicit a letter of invitation. And this is going to be a less formal webinar than normal because we're going to be talking about requirements and how you might find these on the web and find out what particulars you need, and thus, when you're approaching someone, how you might go about doing that. So let's talk first about a letter of invitation. And we're going to start by looking at the Fulbright US student program. Now, Fulbright is one of the largest international exchange programs in the world. It has counterparts in other countries. So, for example, the Dodd program is Germany's version. Fulbright and Dodd both say, oh, let's bring the world to us and send our people to the rest of the world. And for that, they, for most things, will require either a letter of invitation or an affiliation letter. The exact terminology may vary, but it's still about someone saying, hey, we'd like them to come here, or we'd like you to come here. So the Fulbright US student program happens to be about going to another country to do some sort of project. And for the Fulbright US student, that means you don't have a doctoral degree yet at the time of your applying, but that when you are starting, you will have completed a bachelor's degree or the equivalent in the United States. And so for the Fulbright US student program, you have these tracks, the academic ones, where you'll be doing study at a university or research affiliated with that university. And there are a couple things where there might be a research center that you're working with. And then there's creative and performing arts, which we will touch on briefly, but we'll spend most of our time talking about the academic because that's the most common one. Briefly, creative performing arts, there are more opportunities where you might receive an invitation from an organization that is not a institute of education and is not a research center specifically. And with the academic side, you're usually going to be starting looking at universities and see if there are any particular centers for a field of advanced study, which themselves are usually affiliated with a university. Okay, so when you are applying for the Fulbright program, you have some information that you need to provide. Who are you? That's the biographical data. Tell us about things you've done. So think of resume or CV, that kind of content would go in here. Where have you studied? What publications, if you have them? What awards, if you have them? What things have you done in your life? And that's going to be partly you're showing your qualifications to do whatever it is that you're proposing and that you have much to give. Now, program information, this is about what you're saying, oh, here's what I'm going to do for my Fulbright year. Now, some people will be working on a degree, some people will be trying to make connections, some people will be trying to create some sort of output, could be written, could be scientific, could be intellectual, and what you plan on doing when you come back to the US. Now, if we look at this, you'll see that the summary of the proposal is matched in length by this host country engagement, because a big part of the Fulbright program and similar programs like Dodd is the idea that you're creating an exchange and you want the exchange to have some lasting impact, not just, oh, that was fun, but things where people change what they do, how they see the world, how they understand other people, for example. And so that cultural ambassador role requires not just that you go there, but that someone be there to work with you, to help you do that, to guide you through some of that. And that's where a lot of the affiliation comes. Some entity, a department, a school, a research center saying, we would love to engage with this person when they come. And that's not just about what you do while there, there's also this when you return to the United States. So the statement of grant purpose, that's getting back to what is it that you plan on doing and why that is important. But that affiliation letter is one of the most common areas where people run into trouble. And I will say, in all honesty, when I was first applying for the Fulbright, there was one year I didn't submit my application because I wasn't able to get a letter by the first deadline. Now, I later realized from doing more reading that not all opportunities require it, even though it's well suggested, and that some countries, recognizing the particular challenges of communication and don't even require it at all. If you happen to get it, awesome, but they don't have an expectation of that. There are many universities in different parts of the world where faculty email addresses and even administrative email addresses are not publicly listed. In some cases, the phone is not listed because the expectation is that you will walk in and you will do this in person. And that's not saying good or bad. That's saying, okay, this is a different dynamic for communication than you may be used to in the United States. And usually the Fulbright committees for that country will recognize that and not require an affiliation letter. So I will even say that for the Fulbright year that I did, 2021 to 2022, I did not have a letter of affiliation for that because that country did not require it and did not expect it. I did have to make extra clear in my narrative and my statement of grant purpose about how and why the things were doable and why they were appropriate and desirable, but it was not required here. So the next time that we're going to be spending is about how you would go about finding a affiliation and how you go about soliciting a letter, because there are some things that do require it and that you may have your application be judged ineligible. So let's first go ahead and let's do an award search. We're going to look for something that requires a letter so you can see what kinds of things might be required here. And so let's say that we are looking specifically for a study and research thing, because usually the English Teaching Assistant Awards don't require that letter. So if you don't like listing people, you might look at the ATA program. It's pretty neat. I was in Madagascar when the ETA program in that country launched, and my friends had a blast doing that, and they expanded the program. So for study and research, let's say for our purposes that you were wanting to go to Australia. And so you're looking at these opportunities, and there's this public policy scholarship. Okay, if you're in public policy, you might look at this and say, awesome, this is what I want to do. And it's even an award that can go for 12 to 24 months. Like, yes, 2 years, that's what I want to do. Maybe you have family there. Maybe you want to get a great collection of quality pictures, whatever it is. This is something where you can go and study for 1 to 2 years. And we see that you can do graduate degree, and they'll be starting in February. So you might say, oh, yes, I have other business I need to wrap up first. But once I'm there, I'll be able to get started. And we see that there's no foreign language proficiency. If you're fluent in English, not a problem. Okay. And that you can't, for this particular award, do independent study or research. You can't just wander around the country on your own. This is specifically for study in that country with a university. So we look at this and we see letter of acceptance required. So you need to go through the process of applying to the program and getting a letter offering you admission to that before you start. So usually what happens is that you will identify the opportunity, you'll write there. Sometimes you go through the regular admission process. Sometimes the institution will just issue you a letter based on a decision from a department head or a dean. So in this case, they say, okay, you're not going to be specifying, unless you've got an early admission, you're not going to be specifying where you're going to go, but you say, okay, here are the places I want to, and then you'll have done the application so that when you do reach that point where the grant is starting, you have been accepted into a program. And to kind of help that, it's good to contact a professor and be in conversation with them. And sometimes you can include that correspondence as part of your application. So backing up, So this is for study in Australia to study public policy. So let's go ahead and look at Australia and programs here. So National University, Public Policy, Australia, and we do a search and we find, oh, Australia National University, which is one of the top universities in Australia. So they have a Master Public Policy program, and we can go look at that and see, okay, who's on the faculty there. And depending on the institution, it may take more or less looking, but you can always, in this case, contact the program coordinator and say, hello, I am a student in the United States. I'm applying for the Fulbright program. I would love to study at your university. What is the process? And they might refer you to their regular application, or they might have a different process that they ask you to go through. And in this case, because they have Professor Bice listed there, you can email Professor Bice there and even look at their webpage to see, are there any particular opportunities that you're interested that might let you make your case better about why you're a good fit for that program. Now, in this case, so Dr. Bice has looked at public policy in this particular region of the world. She has held many leadership roles and also is holds a number of rankings at the university. So if you're contacting them and say, hi, I want to work with you through the Fulbright program, and they say, great, here's how you apply for the program, then they're telling you, okay, apply for that. And then assuming the deadlines work out and you're accepted for the Fulbright, then you're able to, for that deadline, submit your letter saying that you've been accepted into the program, and so you can go ahead and start. So let's take a look at another example here. So let's say that you are applying for Bahrain here. So that in this case, it's an open study research award. It's not limited to a particular field. So if we go ahead and look at this, we see that we have the grant length of 10 months. It'll be aligning with the academic year in Bahrain, which runs from September through June. And if we look at the requirements here, it's helpful to have some fluency in Arabic, but it's not required. And then we have letter recommended, but not required at deadline. So when they say that, I would strongly encourage you to look for a letter because that is very helpful. They realize that this may not always be the case, but if you can get it, it improves your application. It was generally rated more strongly because people there are saying, hey, we would like this person to come. So let's go ahead and take a look and look for Bahrain universities. And it's gotten easier to find these, but not necessarily something where you'll find everything in English. So let's take a look. We see ranking of universities there. We could take a look at Wikipedia. That'll give us some idea. Wikipedia is usually not comprehensive, but it might be a helpful starting point. See, okay, that's the older university. That is a younger one. Maybe you have an interest in health sciences that's guiding you in that direction. So let's say that you select the University of Technology, Bahrain. So in this case, the website here will take us to, that looks like it's part of the university website. So let's take a look at that. And you'll see that the link is written in English. It brings us to a landing page that is in English. And so if we look at apply, we have a section for international students. So you can see what the general requirements are for this. And looking through this, we have some things that might not be what you're expecting because we have all this documentation about parents and guardians. So if you're going to be grabbing that stuff for the admissions process, Um, good to be forewarned. Now, this is about regular international students. If you're going at the Fulbright student program should be paying for your tuition. So that's another reason why it's good to know what the regular process is, but to be in communication about it earlier with the faculty before you submit your application, so that you don't create a false expectation somewhere that you will be paying fees that you are not budgeting for. So let's say you had some interest. Let's say you are a computer science major and there's some cool project, some, let's say, application development that you see going on in Bahrain. And so you're interested in going there and studying with someone. Well, we see those are undergraduate programs, so that may be what you're looking for, but I'm guessing with this one here, it accepts study at different levels, so that would not be a problem here. But if you have a bachelor's degree already, you might be looking for a master's student. So, sorry, a master's program. All right, let's go back here and look at the different offerings here. And we see they have contact, including being able to call people and probably message them on WhatsApp. So you don't need to worry about paying for an international call. You can just contact them on WhatsApp. All right. And we have this form for email. Great. Much easier than it used to be. Now, if we're looking here at the programs here, you can see that parts of the website will take us into Arabic content, and other stuff is in the English language. So let's see what happens if we look under apply and we look at postgraduate students. We want to see what their programs they have available at the graduate level. And we see that we have some requirements for documentation, that you need to meet these particular requirements, which is helpful because if you don't meet those requirements, then you might be looking for a university that matches with your background, because you do need to be admitted into a university for that Fulbright US Student Award to be. Now, if we look at this, we see that this is general. This is not specific for any program. This is talking about the graduate level. And we can look at the particular colleges here. So go ahead and see if this breaks this back to the same page as before. Yes. Let's look at the College of Administrative and Financial Services. Master of Business Administration. Maybe you have a regional interest here. Maybe you have family. Maybe you think this is going to be a great place to build some connections with the thing I want to do. And so looking here, we have the degree details you could look at. But what we're really interested in is finding the faculty. And what you might be noticing here is that working in English, you're not seeing a list of the faculty in the same place as you would generally see on an American university webpage. Well, in this case, let's take a look at this organizational chart and see what that shows us about how things are organized. So these are how the different schools and departments were organized. Do we have any chairs listed? No. So, all right, you can say that you looked. I think the best place there would be now to look at About Us to see if there's a list of faculty. And since we don't see this, my recommendation would be to use that Contact Us form or this window here. So let's say you're using the Contact Us form, because this is an opportunity to look at what you might write. So fill in your name here. Hello, I am an American student who is applying to the Fulbright student program for study abroad in Bahrain. I am especially interested in the Master of Business Administration. at your institution. Could you please send me the email address, the name and email address of the chair/head of this department? And you can write this many different ways, but this is finding out, okay, who's in charge of that? And they might refer you to a dean, they might refer you to a specific professor, they might tell you, oh, there's no one in that role as well. Now, there are other ways to do research. So let's go ahead and take a search on LinkedIn for University of Technology, Bahrain faculty and see what comes up. Now, as it happens, there's a LinkedIn page for that. LinkedIn is sometimes surprisingly in-depth in its penetration into the international world. And if we look through here at people who are affiliated with this, we see, okay, there's some alumni here. People who are graduates, you could always reach out to them and say, hi, how did you like your experience in the program? Or do you recommend talking with them? And usually I have found that people will respond fairly well. You want to send out multiple messages because not everyone is checking this or using LinkedIn actively, but it's a way to start to narrow down who you are working with. Now here under page posts, we see, here are some of the people associated with that. And so you might search now for this person here. And we see, oh, okay, we have a number of people showing up there. And this is taking us back to the university website. And we're learning a little bit about who is in which roles. So you could then say, if you were wanting to study in artificial intelligence, oh, here's a professor who's working on this. Now, the metaverse is something that Meta, the company behind Facebook, is spending a lot of money on researching. It's certainly an emergent area. And so you might look for that person and see, oh, here is one person who is working on some things in that area, and you could reach out to them. In this case, they're not at that university anymore, so that might not be what you're looking to do. But you can see here how it's possible to find people who are working on things in many different parts of the world. Okay, so going back to our award search here. So let's say you're doing this and you find the process just not what you're looking for. So now the question is, how might you narrow things down to what you are looking to do? And there are some options here. You'll see that you can narrow this down by country. You can narrow it down by, is it the program where you want to study? And then let's narrow this down to master's level. So even though we still have to look through to find out what the specifics are about, do you need an admission or a letter of invitation at the time of application, this is a much smaller field than we were looking at earlier. So let's look at one last one. So this is for the Czech Republic. And so we are looking at their Open Study Research Awards. And we see that they prefer advanced graduate students capable of working independently and should have some experience in this field. And looking at this, if you're looking for a degree, you need to apply independently for university admission. Okay, great. And if you are doing an independent study, you need a letter of affiliation. If you're applying for a graduate program, it's recommended but not required at the application deadline. Now, because of the way the university thinks, you'd probably want to have your application for admission there in, if not by the time you applied for the Fulbright, shortly thereafter. but you can see that it's not absolutely guaranteed. So if you're working up to the deadline and you just don't have that yet, you still want to go ahead and submit it. Another thing, a last closing recommendation before we wrap things up, is to, if you have a any mentors, faculty around you, talk about your interest, because it's a surprisingly small world in academia sometimes. I have had people approach me and say, "Hi, I'm looking at doing this thing at this university." I said, "Oh yeah, I know someone who works there now who used to be at this school." And then you have an instant connection and you have that reference you can follow up on. So please, if this is something that interests you, talk about it liberally. That's one of the ways to help develop your ideas. Reach out, do research, and ask for people's help with doing the research. If you have a friend who speaks the language, awesome. You can work with the Fulbright program advisor on your campus. Sometimes there'll be a separate uh, fellowship or scholarship advisor. And keep in mind that all these people, including your institution, want you to succeed. And there's a lot of help along the way. So with that, let's say if you have any more questions on this topic, you can contact us at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can schedule an appointment by going to my.acu.edu, and you can find more information as well as links to videos such as this on the Online Writing Center website. Have a good night.